Um, so good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Hall, and I was tasked with the daunting topic of how to be a great researcher. So I've spent a bunch of time doing research on how to be a great researcher since I was asked to do this. And this is a brand new talk. It's extremely up to date, up to the minute. Just in time, there you go. And one thing I will also comment, because Michelle didn't gratuitously advertise her own students' talk, but a product of our research is our joint research is gonna appear at PLDI on Tuesday morning. So you'll see what kind of research we've been doing, but we've had a very successful collaboration starting in 2014, and hopefully will continue long into the future. So I'm from University of Utah, and this is actually a picture of our campus. And I'm going to have it again on the next slide. So, I have this awesome group of people I'm talking to that are, current and future programming language researchers. And so I just want to put in a plug for my university. I am personally looking for a postdoc like right now. So if somebody is interested and available sometime in the next few months, please find me and come talk to me. Our faculty just grew by 8 this year, okay? and we have 10 slots for next year, which I don't think we will, or greater than 10. I don't think we'll fill all of them. And because we have a bunch of new faculty, we're going to need a bunch of great new grad students. So if we have undergrads in the audience, please apply to the university. And we hired 2 awesome PL researchers this year, Sadia Pan, most people know as Sadeh, and Pavel Pancheka from University of Washington. So we're really, really excited about the future at University of Utah, and hopefully we can get some of you to come join us as well. Okay, so the outline of my talk is, first I'm going to tell you what my research area is. Then I'm going to, because it's a mentoring talk, I'm going to tell you my personal history. And I have some reasons behind that. I'm going to come back to it at the end when I summarize. Then you can see the product of my recent research. What are the essential qualities of being a good researcher, and how to navigate your research career. And there should be lots and lots of time for questions. Okay, so I use this one slide to kind of give you a highlight of my research area. So I work in programming systems for high-performance computing. And this particular slide has there must be a timing thing on this slide. This particular slide has the top, 4 of the top 5 supercomputers, and number 8 because I just had this slide and I updated it, and the list has changed. So the question that my research is trying to solve is that of performance portability. Can you write a program to target a supercomputer and have it perform well across all these different platforms? And if you want to know what the answer is today, it's no. And in fact, people do an enormous amount of writing their code to target very low-level hardware features. When you're operating at the supercomputer level, if your code is inefficient, if you're not really extracting the best performance, as close to peak as possible, which is also very hard. If you're not doing that, you're not getting your science done. You're costing lots of money in terms of your allocation, in terms of the energy required to do that computation. And so you want to perform at the absolute peak of the architecture, and if you can't outperform what somebody can write in low-level hardware-specific code, then they won't use your tool. Okay, so if your tool is 50% of what somebody can write manually, that's not good enough. Maybe if it's within 5%, it's okay. Okay, so that's my research area, and I'm particularly known for looking at new architectures and applying parallelizing compiler technology to them. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you some personal stuff because it's a mentoring workshop. So how did I get here? Okay, I'm often asked, how did I end up in computer science? So my early history is really, how I was raised, the environment in which I was raised played a big role. My mother was a math and computer literacy teacher, and my father was a journalist and a writer. And so I was surrounded by things from both of them. My dad had books all over our house, newspapers. We watched hours and hours of network news at home every day on our 3 channels that we had back in the Stone Age. My mother solved puzzles. She would, at the end of a day of work and feeding a family of 7, she would sit down in her favorite chair and she would do puzzles. That was her way of relaxing. And she had a TRS-80, which was a hobby computer at a time when almost no one had computers in their houses, okay? So that's how I ended up sort of being in the environment that made it possible for me to do this kind of job. But honestly, and one more thing about my mother, this computer science thing was kind of taking off when I was in high school, and she went and took classes at the university to learn computer science. She wanted to get a degree, but she would have had to quit working, so she just weaved that into being a computer literacy teacher. So how did I end up getting a computer science degree? It was probably my mom, but I did, you never want to attribute something to your parents when you can take credit for it yourself. And really what happened is I took an aptitude test in high school, and it said, be a computer scientist or be an accountant, but don't be an engineer. Because I'm lacking certain engineering skills, but I had the math that sort of led me to these other fields. And so I actually tried both in college, and I ended up with a degree in CS and mathematical sciences from Rice. I had this plan that I was gonna, I thought, oh, computer scientists, they're kind of nerdy. I'll just be a manager. I'll learn this because I'm good at, I can do it. I'm good at it. But I'll be a manager. So I was going to go to business school, and that was my plan up until my junior year of college. Then I took Ken Kennedy's algorithms class, and it was absolutely the best class I had in college. And that was what made me decide, hey, I really like computer science and I want to stick with it. And when I was graduating from high school, I looked around at the jobs college, sorry. I looked around the jobs that were available to me, and I wasn't that interested in them. And I said, but I really like school, so I think I'll do that for a little while longer. So my plan was to get a master's degree. And I was working on that plan for at least a year, but I went to my advisor, Ken Kennedy, and I said, I want to get a master's degree. He said, we don't really do that, but why don't you join the PhD program? We'll pay you. And then if you don't like it, we'll let you get out early with a master's degree. So I was kind of arm twisted and manipulated into a PhD. So there's my PhD advisor, Ken Kennedy, and also people known to this community, Keith Cooper and Linda Torkson, were on my committee and have been lifelong mentors for me. And later on, I went to Stanford. I was a research scientist there for over 2 years and worked with John Hennessy and Monica Lamb. And these pictures, if you know these people, they don't look like this anymore. I tried to take pictures from when I worked with them. So. All right, so this is a little bit more detail of my career timeline, and this is going to kind of come back because I have not had a traditional academic career, and I think it's really important for all of you, although I am a traditional academic at this point in time, but I think it's really important for all of you to realize there are lots of different paths to doing what you want, and there are lots of different ways to do it. So I got my degree, so I'm actually confessing, like Michelle didn't want us to, as to how old I was. Yes, I am, although I was 8 when I got my degree from Rice, of course. But I got married while I was a PhD student. I stuck around for a little while as a research scientist at Rice. I actually got my PhD after I started working, which is like a really, really, really bad idea, so don't do it. And so I got my PhD in 91. I went to Stanford. I spent 2.5 years there. And then I had a very short stint as a visiting professor at Caltech. And then I spent 12 years at USC, and I had a joint appointment. I was on the research faculty, and I was what was called a project leader at the Research Institute, Information Sciences Institute. And I did that for 12 years, and I rose in the ranks to be a research associate professor. And somewhere in the middle of that, I had two girls that you're going to hear a little bit more about in the next slide. And then I moved to University of Utah as a tenured associate professor in 2008 and was promoted in 2012. Now I don't, as a full professor, you kind of stop having those promotion paths, but things happen sort of on the external side in terms of organizing conferences or giving mentoring talks or being on boards and chairing committees and things like that. So it doesn't really show up here. Okay, so one of the products of this timeline are these two girls that I'm really proud of. So my older daughter followed the family. My husband also went to Rice. She followed the family to Rice, and she got a CS degree in 2018 and is working as a software developer. And so that's her graduation picture, and this is the owl sign for Rice, if you don't know. And this is my younger daughter, Jess, got into USC. This is I got into USC picture. She's going to study astronautical engineering. And so my husband and I are really proud that we replaced ourselves with two techies, but my younger daughter likes to call herself the rebel because she's not a computer scientist and she's not going to Rice. Okay, and I should also say, since one of my research products is PhD students, and one of them happens to be hiding out in the back of the room for Pratana Basu. So I've graduated 10 PhD students. And I don't know if any of the rest of you are in the room, but I don't see you. Okay, so I came up with 9 essential qualities of a great researcher. And I thought that this would be a moment for audience participation, and we would see what people think. The faculty are not allowed to answer. Any senior researchers in the audience also not allowed to answer. So what do you think are the essential qualities of a good researcher? Yes? Introspection. That's a good one. You should read papers. Yes. Other comments? In the back? Patience. Yeah, that's a good one. None of these are in my list, but some of them have some overlap. Yes. Open to criticism. That is in my list, and you also heard a lot of it from Jason as well, right? Yes. Ambition. It's a good one. Yes. Critical. Yes. I didn't hear that. Embracing uncertainty. That's good. You guys should have given this talk. Yes. Yes, that's also in my list. Communicating your research ideas. Any others? Okay, that was pretty good. All right, so the number one thing, well, okay, so here's my list of 9. So I have 3 categories. So the first one is, are you suitable for research? Do you have the kind of thought processes that make you suitable for research? So the very first one on my list is intellectual curiosity. If you don't have that, then you're not going to be able to ask questions to find the solution. You have to have problem-solving skills. You have to be analytical, and you really, really have to be methodical, and you're going to have to learn how to be that if you aren't. Okay, and so that's the are you suitable for research question. And then this is where we talk about toughness, and Jason spent a lot of time talking about this in the part of his talk that I caught. So you need to be self-directed. You have to figure out what you're going to do. And you need to be committed, because if you don't really want to do what you're doing, you're not going to be able to, do all the work that it's going to take to be successful. And then you need to be resilient when things go wrong. And then finally, the more social aspects of being a great researcher. One is you have to be a leader. And the other is you have to be a team player, which may sound very contradictory, but is not. And then finally, the strong communicator. That's essential. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next few slides is I'm not going to go through each one of these per slide, but I'm going to have a couple of, I'm going to group some of these topics together. Okay, so intellectual curiosity. I did this because my girls always make fun of me. I always say, I wonder, and it'll be about something completely random, like, oh, these people in this car have this bumper sticker on their car, and I wonder what that's really about, and what is that? It'll just be completely random, but it also is a question that I ask all the time in my job, and I wonder on research topics all the time, and of course have my whole career, but now as I become more senior, I think about, how to build a better department, how to get more people from underrepresented groups to stick with computer science. How to get our department to, address, how we're going to get enough graduate students to be researchers with all these new faculty. So I think about all these things all the time. In fact, sometimes it's hard to control the thoughts flying through my head. But so that's I would say, is the number one quality of a researcher. Okay, and the next is, I'm kind of grouping all of these together. And again, this is the suitability. Are you suitable for research? You absolutely have to be a good problem solver. You have to like being a good problem solver. And so you have to find the problem. No one's necessarily going to tell you what the problems are. I mean, you can follow the pack and have someone else to identify the problem and then try to solve it. But it's much better to find that corner of the problem that no one else has figured out, So that means you have to be able to identify problems. You have to understand what has been done before and what were the strengths and weaknesses of what was done before. And that means we had one of our answers from the audience was you need to read papers. You really need to know what the field is doing. And you need to understand what was good and really, the goal is to find a weakness so that you can then address it and make something better. And then you need to find a solution strategy. So all of that requires problem solving skills. The next thing is you need to be analytical. So at least all of the research that I do tends to focus on performance or energy or something you can measure. But in general, if you want to say your idea is better than someone else's, even if you're doing social science or biology or whatever, you have to have something you can measure and be able to show that whatever your idea was is better than something else that you're measuring against as a baseline. So where the analytical comes in is, first of all, you have to figure out what you're going to measure, but guess what? Experimental research gives you bogus results all the time, or it gives you the right results, but you don't know why. And so that's where the analytical piece comes in. You have to be able to figure out what was this, did this behave as I expected? And if not, why not? And challenge yourself, because boy, you want to find the flaw in your experiment before the reviewers do. And you want to be able to fix it. And so I can't tell you how many, every piece of experimental work has this problem where the methodology, it takes a lot of time to refine and make better and to figure out what's going on. And the last one is you have to be methodical. And again, I do experimental research, and you probably can guess that this is coming from some horror stories, but one of them is, okay, I get this great result. What did I do to get this result, and can I reproduce it? And so hopefully you have enough provenance of the way that you did the experiment that you can figure that out. And you need to keep track of the different results. And here's a horror story that has happened too many times, which is you have a result, it's not quite what you want it to be, you tweak something, and now everything breaks. And so everything breaks, and you can't even get that result that you weren't 100% satisfied with anymore because you don't quite know what you did to break it. And so then you waste a bunch of time kind of trying to recreate that result. So you know, I mean, there are a lot of tools today to help you track software changes and track your results and things like that you should take advantage of. And so you need to have a careful methodology in order to be able to accelerate the experimental process. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the sort of less happy issues. These are all the good aspects of being a researcher. Let's talk about some of the less happy issues, but you know, you're going to see a fair amount of overlap with some of the things that Jason said. Okay, so we're going to talk about toughness. So the next is you have to be self-directed. And so let me just tell you about a typical day in my life, which is I have 20 things I need to get done that day. And then I have a choice as to how well I'm going to do them. So some things I'll do exceptionally well because I'm a researcher and I want, you know, to do the absolute best research and convince others that it's the absolute best research. Some you need to do sort of well, but you don't necessarily have to hit it out of the park. And then some you can just do good enough, adequately. And so if you think about the quality of how you need to accomplish these tasks, then you can adjust how many tasks you get done. Okay, so maybe I can do one thing exceptionally well, and I can do 3 things well, and I can do 8 things good enough, adequately, but I can't do 20 things, okay? And so sometimes, you know, so every day it's a choice of, okay, these are all the things I need to do today, and I'm going to prioritize, and I'm going to figure out how, you know, what quality of work I need to do on each one of them. And then some things are going to fall off the end, right? So 8 is less than 20. So the best case scenario, I suppose I could do some things even worse than adequately, and then maybe I could get a few more things done. So what happens to the rest of them? Any suggestions from the audience? The best answer is I shouldn't have let Catherine answer. I should let the young people, but we all do this every day. The best answer is find someone else to do it and get them to do it well or exceptionally well. Okay, and then it still gets done. All right, but you can't always do that. So some things just fall off the end. Okay, and so this is the thing that you have to realize is that you can't. You're always going to have more things to do than you could possibly do. And it actually is kind of an empowering thing because then you realize, well, I can't do everything. So I'm just going to figure out, you know, how I'm going to do the things I'm going to do. And then you don't like stay up all night trying to get all 20 done because you can't do that. It's never going to end. And there's another thing you can do before you get those 20 on your list. And what do you suppose that is? Okay, it's no. Say no. Say no to some of them. That's the other thing. That's a really hard thing to do, but that's if someone is asking you. You also have to say no to yourself and say, this isn't that important. I'm just not going to do it. Okay, and you have to. This is something I have to do every single day, and so this is part of the work process. And somebody asked Jason about how you manage your time. Well, you have to figure it out, but this is a big part of what you're able to accomplish. You also have to get faster at things, or you know, find ways to make it easy to do at least the adequate job on things faster. Okay, so that's really, really important. This is a day-to-day skill. I'm still learning it. I hope to get better. And, you know, it's just something that you have to figure out what works for you. Okay. This is getting, you know, into this question of being committed and resilient. So several of my most cited papers were rejected many times, okay? And, Jason was saying that as well. I've seen Catherine give a talk where she says that as well. This is really something that is going to happen to you. And in fact, if you're doing research, you're going to get rejected a lot. You're going to get, very positive reviews a lot too, and particularly as you get more, secure in what you're doing. But you're going to get rejected a lot. And so a good thing about rejection, which is sometimes hard to see when it's happening, is that research gets better through iteration. So when you get that rejection, you should try to learn something from it. And even if the reviewers didn't tell you anything useful, they usually do, you making another pass over things, thinking through, more time passing, more things happening around you, better understanding the problem, the research will get better. And sometimes the rejection is deserved. You put something out there, it's not ready, and it should get rejected. But most of the time, in my experience, is because there just wasn't that connection with the reviewers. You just didn't quite make that connection with the reviewers, and that doesn't mean that they're wrong. They're probably not wrong. I mean, occasionally reviewers are wrong, but most of the time, and in fact, you always want to think, oh, they just don't get it, or they're really wrong. But usually it's a partnership, right? You write a paper, they read the paper, you had to sell the idea, somehow you didn't succeed. And so it's really helpful to read those reviews and say, hey, why didn't they get it? This is great stuff. Why didn't they get it? And then try to use that to adapt what you do in the future. I like Jason's magic table. I've used the magic table as well many, many times. Sometimes it gets very muddy how your work relates to other work, and that is a very common reason for rejection, is this doesn't seem to be making a contribution or enough of a contribution. That's a very common reason for rejection. And so that magic table helps to really clarify, how your work is different from other people's work that's considered the state of the art. So the thing is, it's very discouraging, and it's very discouraging to get rejected. And it's okay to be really upset about it. It's okay, at least privately, to blame the reviewers in the short term. But at the end of the day, you take the rejection, you learn from it, and you get stronger from it. And so that's just a piece of the job. And what's neat about it is the product becomes better, and you feel more confident about what you produced. And so that's just the sort of a negative aspect of research that people need to deal with and learn from. And I have a max rejection of 7. I had a paper that was rejected 7 times, and then it was published the 8th time. So I don't know, you have to that's where the commitment comes in. You have to really believe in the work and just keep going with it. Okay. All right, now the social side. So I said you need to be both a leader and a team player, okay? So you need to be able to work on your own and work independently. It needs to be possible. Even if you never, even if you never write a single author paper, you need to have the skills to be able to do that. And particularly, hopefully you build them as a grad student. And so that means you need to be able to lead a project. And hopefully you have some people that you can get to help you with the project. And so, so you want to be able to lead others to come up with a solution to solve the problem. And you need to sell people on your ideas if that's part of if it's your idea that is driving the work, and line up others who see your vision and can contribute in ways that you can't do by yourself, okay? And the team player aspect is that the best research comes from a bunch of different people with different viewpoints and different experiences coming together and solving a problem, okay? And solving a problem that none of them could do on their own. And the reason that sort of team-oriented research is really effective is because if you put together a unique kind of team, then your research is going to be unique, your answer is going to be unique, and you won't have to worry so much about competing with the herd that's also working on this problem. And then the next thing is this community is really essential in research, your community. And so all those of you who are young, just getting started in research, a bunch of these people in the room, if you stick with programming languages, a bunch of these people in the room, you'll see at every conference for 20, 30, 40, however many years. And they'll be your colleagues. They'll be the people who are reviewing your work. They'll be people whose work you're reviewing. And so that community aspect of research is really important. You have to sell your ideas to other people. Well, you need to be part of a community so that they will respond to the things that you're in your research. And keep in mind that one day you're the reviewer, another day you're being reviewed. One day somebody's your colleague, the next day they're your program manager, or they're your, at a funding agency, or they're, I don't know, they're evaluating your work in some other way. So you build that community, and over time, you can't afford to alienate anyone. Okay, all right, I'm just about done. I need to wrap up. So then I have the communication is the last item. So if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there, did it make a sound? So there's a research corollary. If you do great research and no one knows about it, did it really happen? And so you have to be able, it's not just that you can do the work, but you also have to be able to tell other people about the work and convince them that your solution is better than what's out there. Okay, so this is the list that I came up with. And now I just have like some closing remarks. So one is about navigating your research career. And so the takeaways are you need to enjoy your work. You need to do it because it's fun. And if you can work most efficiently if you focus and leverage your strengths, the strengths of your own abilities and the strengths of the people around you that you can bring into your orbit. And so at the macro, focus on the things that you want to be the impact of your work. What is unique about you and your talents and the work that you've done before. And finally, are you working on problems that you're really excited about? Because you need to be so excited that other stuff that's happening around you, you can kind of tune out sometimes. And so you need to wake up thinking about the problems. You need to have that brilliant idea while you're driving your car somewhere or whatever. And so you need to be excited about what you're doing. And then at the micro level, how you do manage your time. What's your most productive time of day? That's where you do, for me, I'm a morning person. I do my writing in the morning. And at the end of the day, I just can't even figure out what to say. But in the morning, it's a fresh brain, and I can think about what to say, and also what my plans are, and how I'm going to solve a particularly difficult problem. And block out uninterrupted time during that period, because that's when you should get most of those 8 tasks that you're going to try to do done, or 1 or 3. It's okay to have a meeting or do your email when you're tired. I like afternoon meetings because then you can, you don't have to feel bad because you did all that work in the morning. You want the meetings to be back to back so that they're not you're not constantly being interrupted. Delegate whenever possible. And even when you don't have a deadline, set an internal deadline. Okay, I'm going to get this done in the next hour because I need to move on and do something else. To set your own deadlines. Okay, and then final remarks. One thing I like about computing research is it's very flexible, and so you can, you have an enormous amount of control both over your day and your career, and the kinds of things that you work on. As long as you can convince people that you know what you're doing, and get them to support you in it, then you have an enormous amount of control. And so I find it really good for being able to find some balance in my life. And I just have some suggestions. We talked about reviews, but in general, you're going to be reviewed in different ways. Your career is going to be reviewed. Some piece of software you wrote is going to be reviewed. All sorts of things are going to happen. And when people review your work, you should listen carefully to what they have to say. You're going to get a lot of advice. Some of it's conflicting. And so you have to be able to synthesize that advice and figure out what makes sense. And then the thing that I tell people, as I started out, I said, I've had a very sort of non-traditional academic career path. And that was sort of, I ended up in that because of, first 2-bit body and then 4-body issues. And I actually, had other opportunities that I had to pass up because they just weren't the right thing in my life. And meanwhile, even now, like people will make up these things about, oh, if you're not a diamond medallion on Delta, then because you're traveling all the time, then you're not doing enough. You're not working hard enough. Or you have to work 80 hours a week, and if you don't work 80 hours a week, you're not doing enough, or whatever. People will have these hard and fast rules that like make no sense for most people, and they're very unappealing. They make the field very unappealing. And so just beware of people telling you have to do this, and then you have to do this, and then you have to do this. You're going to have to find your own way and what works for you. So with that, I don't know how much time I have for questions, but yeah. Take care. We have about 5 minutes for questions for Mary.
You mentioned that you got a PhD after working, and there was like in the audience. I don't know what that means and why that's wrong.
I couldn't quite hear what.
I said you mentioned that you got a PhD after working, and in the audience it kind of like, I don't know what that means and why is that wrong.
So I actually got my PhD right out of grad school, but I don't know why that. Yeah. So let me give a little history. So I finished my work. I defended my PhD, and I took on a research scientist job after I defended, but before I turned in my thesis. Okay. 9 months went by before I turned my thesis in. So or maybe it wasn't 9, but it was something on par. So that's what that was about. So people get into this horrible thing where they've started a job and they don't have the energy to finish their research, and some of them never finish. And so that's really bad. And some of them take 10 more years. I know some people who took 10 more years. So don't do that. Other question?
I have a question.
Sure.
Because I'm now entering a stage of my life. How did you navigate still doing lots and lots of work and doing great research while raising 2 kids?
Okay, so the question is how to do research and raise 2 kids. It's kind of hard. You get help at home so that you know that your kids are okay when you're traveling. Although the other thing I did about traveling is I did it very, very, very creatively. Like I would when I had babies, I would take them with me, and I would get somebody to come too from my family. I didn't do that very often, but I did that a few times. I took advantage of dropping the kids off at the grandparents on the way to things a lot, actually, especially in those first 2 years when the kid can sit on your lap and it's free. It's a free flight. So I did a bunch of, and then like you don't have to go to a conference for the whole time. You can show up. You can pick 2 days that you're going to go, and you show up and you go to those 2 days and you make sure that you talk to all the people that you want to talk to during that time, and you make sure you ask a question in a talk that's related to your research and things like that. You have a presence even though you weren't there for very long. And so I did a lot of that. I worked 40 to 50 hours a week. Like I never worked, all these people that work crazy hours, I never ever did that. So that's another thing that you have to do. I sometimes get up at 3 and get something done in the morning before I have to, start my day, because that's when whatever, you just find strategies that work for you. Other question?